Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp and I'm the Chief Digital Manager for Dataversity. We want to thank you for joining the latest in the monthly webinar series, Data Architecture Strategies with Donna Burbank. Today, Donna will discuss master data management, aligning data, process, and governance, sponsored today by Couchbase and Prophecy. Just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the event. For questions, we will be collecting them via the Q&A section, or if you'd like to tweet, we encourage you to share highlights or questions via Twitter using hashtag DA strategies. And to find the Q&A section, you just click the icon in the bottom middle of your screen for that feature. And we very much encourage you to chat with us and with each other throughout the webinar. To do so, you click the chat icon, which is also in the bottom middle of the screen, to activate that feature separately. As always, we will send a follow-up email within 2 business days containing links to the slides, a recording of the session, and additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now let me turn it over to Rick for a word from our first sponsor, Couchbase. Rick, hello and welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect. Looks good.
All righty. So again, thanks for that introduction, Donna. Today, I'm going to take this opportunity to quickly summarize some of the key benefits of the Couchbase data management platform. The pandemic has basically made us a touchless society. We've had a virtual overnight digital transformation. Everything is dynamic and agile, and basically the world has gone mobile. Online retail is way up, and organizations have had to speed up their cloud adoption because applications are moving to the cloud, since companies need to be able to provide support for customers worldwide 24/7, and they need to be able to maintain an infrastructure that can scale up or scale down as needed. Customers browse and make purchases from phones and computers. Businesses and consumers make and fulfill orders remotely, and IoT machines constantly batch and stream data back up to databases. So these post-COVID interactive applications need to provide fast 24-hour personalized services. And these digital touchless transactions produce significant amounts of data. So we need a data repository that can store, aggregate, manage, and help us analyze that data so that we can produce actionable information, and we need to do that very quickly. The problem is transactional databases, the traditional databases, are generally too slow, and they can't handle the massive transactional loads that modern applications require. On the other hand, databases like Couchbase, NoSQL databases, are built to be fault tolerant and scalable, and they can handle large volumes of data and also scale. NoSQL databases also have the benefit of schema on read, which means that the schemas don't have to be preset when the database is created. So developers can actually set the schema as the data is being read. And this flexibility is tremendous, and it's very important for modern applications because there's no downtime. You can't have downtime with modern applications. You can't take down the application so that you can adjust the schema. That's just not an option. So what's the Couchbase differentiation? Well, Couchbase is agnostic. So we allow you to store JSON data in a document store and also perform at scale, giving you an easily manageable UI so that you can easily manage the data in your repository. And we also offer all that on the cloud. Some Couchbase cloud differentiators. I'm not going to read through this whole slide, but my favorite differentiator is number 2. We allow customers to use their own VPCs. So that means no margin stacking, where a database company would buy cloud resources and then resell those cloud resources to their customers with a margin stacked on top. So Couchbase doesn't do that. You can negotiate directly with the cloud provider of choice to get those types of benefits directly from the cloud provider. Couchbase maintains control of the data, and that data is managed by Couchbase, but it remains within the customer's VPC. and fully under their control. So the data never leaves the control of our customers. We've got a proven solution, and it's been adopted for many industries, a range of industries. In the retail space, we have customers like Lowe's and Best Buys. In healthcare, we have customers like WebMD. And in financial services, we have customers like ADP and PayPal. We offer a platform that allows you to access data from everywhere, whether that be the edge with Couchbase Mobile to Couchbase Server on-prem, and also now in the Couchbase Cloud. There's no ETL required because, as I mentioned before, the schemas can be defined on read if necessary. And we also support SQL-like queries. So you can query the data in the Couchbase clusters using SQL syntax, which is very familiar to most analysts and developers. And our DBaaS solution, our database as a service solution, allows you to maintain control of your data because it remains in your VPC. So the bottom line is Couchbase is better, faster, cheaper, and more flexible. Again, thanks for your time, and back to you, Shannon.
Rick, thank you so much for this. And if you have any questions for Rick or about Couchbase, you may submit them in the bottom right or in the Q&A portion of your screen. And he will be joining Donna in the Q&A at the end of the presentation today. And now let me turn it over to Bill for a word from our second sponsor, Prophecy. Bill, hello and welcome.
Thanks very much, Shannon. Do I look?
Yeah.
Screen looks okay. Great.
You look good.
All right. So why is Prophecy outcome focused? This is our major tagline, outcome focused MDM, because we recognize that technology is critical to MDM, but that MDM is also only a means to an end. Very much in keeping with today's main topic from Donna, we're very interested in technology, but not for its own sake. Rather, we're focused on helping our customers drive business outcomes. At Prophecy, we think of our job in two parts: delivering the best and most flexible MDM platform and architecture to enable our customers to solve any MDM problem, or as is usually the case, many MDM problems simultaneously. Likewise, to engage the customer, just as important, irrespective of their prior knowledge, experience, or sophistication, and make them successful on their MDM journey. Let's start with how we enable our customers with our platform first. All real-world business processes are built on more than one master data domain. We've learned, I saw this in 10 years as an analyst and also with Prophecy. Prophecy solutions are inherently multi-domain, both platform and pricing. We're in the minority of MDM vendors in that we don't charge by data domain. Prophecy customers therefore typically adopt an inherently multi-domain approach because they want that value. The pie charts on the right there show actual data from our customer base surveys. I just want to point out that you don't see the registry style under implementation styles. It's not because we don't support it, it's just that as a standalone style, it's not very popular anymore. The majority of our customers generally end up at what you could argue is the most sophisticated style technically and operationally, and that's coexistence. So we're made up of a single code base, which normally you wouldn't bring up, but it makes Prophecy not only easier to install, learn, and maintain, but it makes it easier for us to innovate as a vendor. For example, we've been using machine learning algorithms for matching since before it was cool, and we're about to integrate a tight integration with Microsoft's upcoming Purview data governance solution. Most MDM vendor solutions are actually comprised of separately acquired or developed tools by capability. They're more difficult to install, maintain, and use, and it's much more difficult for those vendors to innovate over time. We're also built on a cloud-native architecture. It's somewhat important in MDM to understand the difference at a high level between the various cloud architectures out there. There are actually very, very few SaaS solutions for MDM, and they usually involve either a fixed relational data model or some sort of abstracted data store that may or may not be ACID compliant and have transactional integrity that you need for operational MDM. If you see a cloud partnership announced by most vendors with a platform in the cloud, it's usually what we call infrastructure as a service, which is exactly like being on premise, except it's on somebody else's hardware. You still have to do most or all of the admin, and there are some MDM vendors even call themselves software as a service when they're in fact infrastructure as a service. At Prophecy, we have the only true PaaS in the MDM world that's platform as a service, fully containerized under Kubernetes, and it will run on any cloud platform. In your tenant, by the way, that we do not access your data. We have no access to it in that scenario. Now we're going to turn to the engage side of the Prophecy solution, which is also where Prophecy shines and why I joined Prophecy after leaving Gartner. Prophecy becomes a valued partner to all of our clients. Prophecy understands that the customer is on a journey and wants everyone to get a fast start, irrespective of whatever their current state is. And we support this from both the business and the technical perspectives. We designed our go-to-market around a fast start, so we don't have any, as I said before, no domain limits in our pricing model. We do have professional services, but their objectives are not to continually charge money over a long period of time. They're to make our clients and partners self-sufficient. And we also have a video-based training center called Academy, which is quite well used and effective. I'd just like to point out the bars on the right are not precise, and every implementation is different. But rarely do we ever have an implementation take weeks or, heaven forbid, months. In fact, I almost hate to say it, but at Prophecy, we've made sort of a cottage industry of resurrecting sort of failed or struggling MDM implementations that have other software attached to them, and either working alongside it or more often replacing it at a better price point. I think this quote is actually from me from a couple of years ago before joining Prophecy. Gartner says that the #1 reason for MDM failure is the lack of a plan that outlines the financial benefits. Our #1 priority is to make our clients successful. So we've developed a framework called the Business Impact Roadmap, or BEER. We use it to build stakeholder buy-in and prioritize the pieces of the implementation that can deliver the most value the most quickly. It's much more than just a business case. It also involves a roadmap. And it was pretty gratifying in the 2020 Magic Quadrant, when Gartner was still measuring this stuff after I left. We were cited as having the most initial delivery of value in under 3-month implementations at Prophecy. We find this is the best way to reduce program risk, and is just another reason that I chose to join Prophecy. True MDM success only happens if you embrace the idea of iterative deployment and deliver value early and often, again, in keeping with today's main topic. As a practical matter, this is what most of our customers do on a daily basis. They've rejected the idea of a 2-year MDM deployment that will likely be obsolete by the time it's delivered. Instead, they iterate, evaluate, and repeat, adding domains and data sources in any sequence they like, justified by outcomes. Success begets success. Our most successful customers just keep building out their footprint, broadening their use case, and delivering more and more value to our clients. Thanks very much for your time today. I'm now looking forward to hearing more on the importance of aligning data process and governance from Donna, so I'll turn things back to Shannon.
Bill, thank you so much. And if you have questions for Bill or about Prophecy, you may submit them in the bottom or in the Q&A portion of your screen. You can find that icon in the bottom middle of your screen, as he will likewise be joining Donna in the Q&A at the end of the presentation. And thanks to both sponsors for helping to make these webinars happen. And now let me introduce the speaker of this monthly series, Donna Burbank. Donna is a recognized industry expert in information management with over 20 years of experience helping organizations enrich their business opportunities through data and information. She is currently the Managing Director of Global Data Strategy Limited, where she assists organizations around the globe in driving value from their data. And with that, let me give the floor to Donna to begin her presentation. Hello and welcome.
Thank you, Shannon, and thanks to the sponsors. Always a pleasure to do these and see some familiar faces, or at least familiar names on the participants. So good to see everyone. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. And I want to let you know that this is a series. So each month we pick a different topic amongst data architecture. Master data is always a popular one. But if you missed any of the previous ones, January through March, on data modeling, case studies, or data strategy, you can catch them all there on being recorded, both the slides and the video at dataversity.net. So you can get those. And then if you'd like to join us for any of the future ones, that would be great too, if any of those topics ahead are of interest to you. But without further ado, to the topic at hand is about master data management, which has been around for years, but I would say I've seen in our practice a huge uptick in master data management interest. I think, you know, both of the vendors kind of touched on it, things like digital transformation and being data driven. I mean, anything you want to do with data really has a foundation in master data management. So getting that accurate and comprehensive view of that business critical data, like your customers, products, vendors. We'll go into a lot more on that. That it can be seen as complex, and it can be. There's a lot of moving pieces. I would say to properly get master data management right, probably it is a bit advanced in an organization. We often come in as consultants and maybe suggest that before you fully go in doing full-scale data governance, maybe get master data management, start with something like data governance, or do you have your data model in place? Do you have that business value, ROI ideas, before you get started? Because that just sets the foundation for a much more successful implementation. So, but that can seem overwhelming. So it doesn't have to take, having said that, it doesn't have to take years. I would agree with Bill that it can take months, as long as you get all of your ducks, as they say, in a row. So the idea of this webinar, as with all the webinars I try to do, I mean, anything in data management can seem complex, overwhelming, especially when, some of these terms can seem technical. But if we just get back into the very practical, tactical things you can do to get value. So that's what I'd like to do. And kind of also, full disclosure, I do this for a living as a consultancy company. And I think sometimes the best value I can offer is just some real world battle scars that I've sort of seen in the field that maybe I can share with you. So that is the goal for today. If you've joined our webinars before, you've probably seen this framework, and we use this all the time because this really, I think, sets the stage that master data management, you'll see in the box on the left, really is part of a wider framework of data strategy, which given the name of our company, we do a lot, but really it's a culmination of everything, that aligning your business strategy, what sort of domains do you want to manage, how is that going to enable your data strategy? Maybe you are trying to do customer-driven digitization, or you need a strong master data foundation, but then that touches in with data governance. If you don't have good stewardship and good processes around your data, it's really hard to do master data. It's I would say virtually impossible to do master data without the piece on the right, which is your data architecture, your data modeling. The master data helps with data quality. I mean, there's so much, this is all just sort of one interconnected web. So whenever we work with a client, we always look at all of these areas. Do you need to do all of them in equal amounts? Probably not. That's where getting that really active roadmap comes into play. But I think master data management is really a hub of a lot of these things, and we'll touch on some of these today. So what is master data? We are all data, or I am a data architect, and we love our definitions. And so master data, again, fancy sounding word for something that just really should be a kind of gut feel obvious. It's those core entities of the enterprise. And we'll go through some examples. I often go through and, if I'm learning about a new company, people just say, I say, describe your company. Well, or your organization. Well, we're a university that focuses on students and their degree programs for medical research, right? So you got already here, just in almost the first sentence that describes a company, we had students, right? We had degree programs, we had locations, or we serve our customers around the globe. What is that? Customer, location, right? We just go to a website and sort of start circling the nouns on that website of a company. That's probably gonna be your master data. So it's really sort of intuitive to understand what master data is. And then master data management, sort of by definition, is that the aspect of implementing that. So it's a technology-enabled discipline. It's not the technology. Generally, there is some sort of tool involved, something like a Prophecy, or there's other tools in the market as well. But there's definitely a tech component of that. And there's also the idea of data governance, integrating this into your business. The great thing about MDM and the bad thing about MDM is that once it's working, nobody notices. It's just when you have a great customer service experience and everything's integrated and everything's working smoothly in your supply chain. Often that's a result of master data, but it just makes everything in the background run smoothly. So and when that works, it's because it's that nice integration with people, process, and technology. And we'll go through that in the session to maybe help you get there as well. So again, master data is really intuitive. So, I'm sure you read the news, the story of the cave they discovered in France, where they looked they went and they actually had master data models on the cave walls. Obviously, I'm kidding. But what do we do as humans? We try to find meaning in our lives. We're very visually organized. And we tend to think of the things that drive our life or drive our organization. So without too much of a facetious example, probably were I a caveman and wanted to do a data model that showed the master data in my company, it probably is things like animals, prey, fire, cavemen, right? So it's just really a simplistic way to kind of think that we all sort of understand master data pretty intuitively. I went, this is a full disclosure, I did a master data session last year and stole this slide from it. And I spent a lot of time on this slide last year. I'll just talk on it quickly, but I actually have a lot of fun in my life with the amount of diversity in master data. And I just wanted to go through a few examples. We all hear about single view of the customer, and we will touch on that. That's a high value one, or single view of the product. But I often have had some really fun use cases. I won't go into the dead fish example, but that actually was a master data domain for us. I will talk on just one of them because it touches on a lot of the things we'll cover, and we'll go through a quick little case study at the end. But the $1 million cheese slice. So my poor family, we all come home and sort of gripe about our jobs or tell interesting stories about what happened during the day. And generally mine is a master data story. So, but my family is just sort of ready to expect it. So, I'll come and it's funny, you'll go into an organization as a consultant and there's always that burning platform issue. And you start to see some similarities. So you're in a meeting and you're asking questions. And I was at this one restaurant chain, and all of a sudden we were talking about cheese, and people got really emotional. Not the cheese. This is sort of, you feel like you're in a Monty Python skit or something. Not the cheese slice. You sort of wonder how controversial a slice of cheese could be. And we'll go through this story later. This one slice of cheese actually cost that organization over $1 million US throughout the year because of a master data issue. So this was a restaurant chain. And when you think of, they had a very diverse menu, and one of their differentiators is that people could pick and choose different menu items and make their own, in this case, it was a hamburger, right? And so there was a fancy blue cheeseburger, which that sort of cheese was much more expensive. And so people could pick and choose, but based on supply chain issues, they hadn't priced that successfully. So the fact that this slice of cheese actually went through a lot of, which was master data for them, that's really an ingredient, actually was not connected throughout the industry, throughout the organization. So what supply chain thought that was a price versus what marketing versus the people in the actual restaurants that put it on the point of sale system, there was a disconnect. And that disconnect, which is master data, at the end of the year, because they hadn't priced that slice of cheese as an add-on correctly, cost them over $1 million. So that's an example, really expensive real world example of $1 million slice of cheese. I won't go through all of these. I would love to. I can tell everyone stories on master data because they're always this interesting. Went to another client and it was, oh my gosh, not the baby bottle. Again, you sort of wonder what movie I'm in. Why is a baby bottle so upsetting? In this case, they were doing some online retail with Amazon. And if you're familiar with Amazon, they take their master data very seriously, and they had sort of data quality errors that over time cost them over $2 million for the master data on a baby bottle, which actually isn't a very expensive product, but it cost them a lot just because of data quality issues. We could go on and on. Some of the others you're probably more familiar with. Single view provider for credentialing, or high net worth customers. Do we know who our customers are? Region, market, location, catchment sites. That's always a really popular one. But each of these has a story that really was very impactful for the organization. Just to have some fun with it, because full disclosure, if you haven't noticed, I'm a huge nerd about data, and I do find it fun. So I guess I'm in the right industry. So I just for fun was thinking of, what are all the different areas of master data that I have done in the past, these are probably all in the past 3 or 4 years. I don't know why. Again, I do feel like I'm sometimes in a Monty Python skit, that a lot of these had to do with cows, either the location of livestock. One was actually cow semen, because they were actually doing kind of genetic of herds across. One was actually, yes, adult cow suits. And I have to say the client and I had a good laugh when it was, is it cow suits, medium? Is it cow suit large? Is it called cow suit adult? How do we categorize cow suits? But that was actually one of their products. So for them, that was actually a high value thing. Everything from automobiles to in a lot of different flavors of automobiles, an auto manufacturer, and that was their sales. We had shipping companies were trying to track those automobiles. So that little map below it was actually the routes of those automobiles were master data. So a route of the, all the different routes they could take for them was master data. We've had car manufacturers where the transmission or the components were master data, right? We've had a can of mushrooms was master data, or the mushroom was part of a menu. I actually, again, I am a nerd. I actually raised my voice at a client. We were actually sort of angry at each other for a few days over apple cinnamon. Who would have thought, right? Is that a spice? Is that an ingredient? Is it a category? And that was actually a huge part of their master data, was the idea of flavors and spices and things like that. So I could go on and on. Oil wells, right? That's location, but it's also an asset. There's a lot of different nuance to this. And our classroom, the one next to it, what is a classroom? Is it a group of curricula? Is it a physical building? What if it's an online and you still have students in it, right? So many of these things that seem so basic, when you come home to your family and say, what did you do today? I define what a classroom was. They probably think you're a little crazy until you're in that industry. And each one of these can have a lot of nuance around it in terms of both the definitions and the architecture, as well as how it's used across the organization. So hopefully that was sort of fun example, just to get you thinking. Maybe you saw your own industry in here, or it might have gotten you thinking, maybe there's master or reference data domains that aren't your standard customer product type thing that you might start thinking of mastering. Because I would agree with Bill in the introduction, most companies, I would say all, I don't even say most, I'm not going to even clarify it, you do have more than one master data domain. So you want to prioritize it, but you might start with something smaller and not start with customer. Maybe you want to start with, I don't know, state codes or something that may be a little easier. But even that, I have 3 customers right now where we're really even arguing what a country is. And you'd think that's normal. Can't we just use the ISO country code? But a lot of politics around that, a lot of differences of opinion. So even things that seem simple, nothing is simple in life. And that's almost defines master data. But just because this is a great example to use, we will talk about this classic customer example. It's a very profitable one to think of, and most organizations have some sort of customer, whether that customer is your typical retail customer or a patient or a student or an employee. Yeah, I am not a fan of the quote, if you're a data modeler, you might have the sort of party model where everyone's just a person. That is true in some cases, but there's a lot of nuance, a lot of difference between what an employee is and a customer is, and a lot of that. So that's for another day of arguing, but we can talk about that. But really understanding it is really trying to get to that 360 view of customer. I will talk about this later. Master data is not 360 view of data. It will enable it. So again, I will save my rants. I have many rants on a lot of topics, but the master data allows you to get that 360 view, that you can get that singular view that allows you to really do that analytics. Because if you don't know what the points of those 360 are, you're going to get faulty analytics. So we might have, maybe we're what do you call it, a sporting goods retailer. And who is our ideal customer? Here's our friend Stefan Kraus. He's 31 years old, good looking guy. He lives in St. Moritz, Switzerland. He's a ski instructor. He's won a ski marathon 5 years in a row. He's been in our loyalty program. Like, you would think that this guy's our perfect customer. He almost like embodies our product. But when you actually look at his purchase history, he's only really spent 500 euro in those 5 years. Why? He gets a lot of free gear, right? He actually doesn't make a lot of money. He has a great life, but he's, not our great customer necessarily for purchase, maybe for a spokesperson. There's a lot of other characteristics. He likes to buy things online on his cell phone, and you send him a text message around his ad. He's an ad, he'll probably use it. All of that great information around Stefan Kraus. Until we go and look at our data, and there's another Stefan Kraus. He's 62 years old. He's a banker that lives in Zurich. And you might think, oh, well, forget him. He probably doesn't get out much. He works a lot. We probably want to focus on that first Stefan. And then there's a lot of things around there. Is Stefan his son? Is it a neighbor? Are they just no relationship at all? But if you can't understand which Stefan Kraus you're looking at, which is your master data, you can't all do this other analytics. You may look into the analytics, think, well, he likes, European football, and I don't see him buying our stuff. He seems old fashioned. He wants a letter sent to him, not anything on the cell phone. But if you look at his purchase history, he spends a lot, over 3,500 euro in 2019, because when he does go on his 1 week holiday, he wants to spend a lot of money and have a good time. I go hiking once a year, but I'm going to have the best gear and enjoy it. So this might be really interesting analytics of who is our customer and who's our best spend. But you can't get there unless you can understand Are we talking about Stefan Kraus, the 62-year-old banker with a lot of money, or the Stefan Kraus, the 31-year-old sports enthusiast that maybe isn't the best customer because he's out skiing all the time? I actually had an interesting story. A friend of mine years ago, his name was the same as some fancy doctor, and they somehow mistaked him in the airline frequent flyers, and he always got upgraded because they thought he was the other Mr. Chu. And he enjoyed that for several years till they figured it out. So, but that would be a perfect example here. Which Stefan are we even talking about? So how would we really manage all this complexity around understanding our Stefan and understanding his purchase patterns and how we can help him? So a successful MDM is at least a three-tiered approach from the data architecture, which we'll talk a lot about today, how you get the data models, hierarchies, match, merge, rules, all of that, which a tool can enable, but also things like the data governance and stewardship. Who does define these rules? How, when there's a conflict, do you look through that and manage it? How do we align this with business process? I mentioned that retail, the restaurant chain earlier, and we'll talk a lot about that. A lot of their issue around master data, their data wasn't all that complicated. It was a business process issue, and they had to really look at that before they even touched the data, and that's pretty common. And we'll go through all of these examples. So, but back to the data area, I thought, again, this is an educational webinar series. And for any of you that are new to master data, I know this type of diagram helped me when I was first learning this, so hopefully it will help you. So there is a big difference between transaction data and master data. So we could have, again, filling out the story, our Stefan Kraus. He bought a telemark ski boot in 2017. He spent €250 and he bought it in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Or did he buy it in St. Moritz, Switzerland? Or is that where he lives? Or is that where it was manufactured? So there's a lot of, again, nuance around something as simple as a location. Donna Burbank, when she's not working, she loves to ski as well. Now she bought the same Scarpa telemark ski boot, has a different product code. Is that right? Is that an error? And again, those are the transactions about the master data. So the master data would be the fact that there is a customer called Stefan Kraus. And again, which one is it? Father, son, banker, or skier? Donna Burbank, what's all the attributes about her? Joe Smith. And then the products themselves. Again, a lot of, again, are there different product codes? Because one's in Europe and one is in the US. Should we have one product code throughout the globe? What is the right price? What's the right product name? All of that. And then we'll get into a bit of that location data. Again, is that the store location? Is that where the person lives? A lot of nuance around that. But hopefully that's a quick example of transactions versus master and reference data. We'll get in a little bit about reference data. I sort of think of that as the little cousin of master data. It's often treated the same way, but the easiest way to think of what's the difference, generally when there's a code, like lookup codes, like maybe on my state codes, my region codes, my customer loyalty codes, my gender codes, a lot of that is reference data. It's not that it never changes, but generally it's sort of lists that tend to be smaller, more slowly moving. Whereas your customer, imagine that changes a lot. I could move every week. I could get married and change my name. My loyalty status might change. You know, that is much more dynamic and just a kind of a different beast, but in a lot of ways there's similarities. So, and again, each one of these slides for the data architects in the call or data managers can be a full rant over direct argument over some of this. And one we hear a lot in things like Shannon's EDW conference and things like that are what's master data versus reference data. And I will be neutral on that, uncharacteristically neutral. One person's master data is another person's reference data or another person's attribute or another person's, so in some cases, we've worked with clients where their regions, their markets, their locations, their catchments. We did a webinar a couple of years ago with the Environment Agency of England, and their master data was the different catchment areas where they did have cows. That was one of the cow examples. That was master data to them because they are very location centric. For other people, it is more of reference data. That might be in the example of our retail company. Maybe it's just what's the state or region of our customers, and that's just if I'm in the U.S., a list of the U.S. states doesn't change so often. That maybe that's more reference data, right? And there's millions of examples of that. You could even get into what's an attribute versus master data. For example, I'm working with a a market research firm, and for them, something like flavor is master data. I mean, something like how are chocolate trends trending across the globe, for them is master data. That is their business. Most, maybe at a restaurant, that might be an attribute of a meal, or maybe that's master data then, right? So there's no sort of one size fits all of what's master data versus reference data. That's, or even an attribute or whatever. That's why I find it so fun, as it really tell a lot about an organization. So think back to that slide of the laundry list of bizarre things that can be master data depending on your industry. So a little bit about how one might implement master data. And Bill showed a couple different examples. This is more of a centralized example. Full disclosure, I'm more of a fan of that type of model because there's a lot of models that are valid. I think some people, though, shield calling it a different implementation style when they're not doing the hard work, right? That is, say you want to fully virtualize a distributed model. In a lot of ways, that's a lot harder. You really have to have that single view of the customer, know exactly where all your attributes across the systems, how you publish and subscribe. So you really can't get away from doing that hard work and centralizing at least the design of it. If you're going to have a golden record, sort of by definition, you need to agree on what those golden fields are, and then your implementation style is more secondary, but you'll realize the complexity of that through that analysis. But whichever style you pick, there's flavors, no pun intended, of this. So generally there's some sort of store, whether it's virtual, centralized, in the on cloud, on-prem, but there's some sort of database. I would say I'm a fan of relational databases for that. Again, think of, I've had some vendors say, well, we're kind of a, I can think of my words, more of a graph-based approach. Well, that's fine when we're doing the analytics, but really MDM at its core is more about that matching and merging and more of a relational rule-based approach when you're trying to get that golden record, which is what's the single view of Stefan Krauss or Donna Burbank. So that is generally there's some sort of store. Maybe there's a little sister of reference data that could be in one or the same store. And then you have different data across all of the different systems. So each system is going to have their data model of something as simple as somebody's name and address. And if you've done data for more than 10 minutes, you'll realize how complex something as simple as a name and address can be. I won't go into all of those. That could be in a webinar in and of itself. But there's different data types, different definitions, and then different fields. And maybe you get the name from one field, the CRM, but we get the fact of whether they're in the loyalty program from another system, or their Twitter ID from the marketing handle. And maybe those are all master data. Again, I'm trying to save my rants, but I rant about master data just about once a week. For example, my insurance company that you've probably heard me complain about, still can't change my address with them because I'll change my address online with one system, and then I get a mailing from another system with the old address, and then something else from another address. Why? They don't have good master data. Which change is made in one system, it doesn't cascade to the others. So another misconception often in master data is, well, isn't that kind of like a warehouse? You can get a single, a dimension of a warehouse is a single view. I think the difference, one of the key differences of master data is that operational aspect, those lines that are going publish and subscribe, so that I change my address in the website, it'll automatically cascade to the finance system or my mailing system when I get my bill and that sort of thing. That's the really exciting part of it, is that you get that single view of customer across all your systems or whatever we're mastering. So the MDM data model would generally be a subset of those, or that common set. Some people consider it the super, again, there's pros and cons to each. Some people tend to have a much wider list of MDM, almost that's the superset of all the interesting things. Some people in different use cases really want to keep that very, or maybe it's a phased approach. Let's just try to get the name and the address and the email cascaded across. One of our biggest success stories in MDM was literally just name and email, and the amount of value they got. Back to the earlier statement of what's the ROI, they just said, if we can get our email addresses right, think of the supply chain things when they get the email for delivery or the marketing campaigns, and they really just honed in on that almost literally one or two attributes, name and email, for their MDM, and moved on from there. And then there's a lot of pros and cons to each of those approaches. But that's the idea, is you get these attributes from all across the different systems. What's that, then that golden record? Either do we always know that it's the website that's the best? Do you have to do, it was mentioned earlier, things like AI and fuzzy matching? Maybe I have the machine kind of depend what the best name is, or do I have a person look at it? A lot of different ways to do that. But generally across the systems, you get this idea of the golden record, which this is the valuable, the validated data in the center. The beauty of that, again, is the fact that there's this lookup and this active in the systems, so that when someone looks, I'll just give an example of it. I like to complain a lot, but I actually had a really good customer service experience that was a result of master data. I actually know, because I know the person who worked for this airline. It wasn't one of our customers, but so when we used to fly in the old times, that's one of the only places in the world where I'm treated nicely, because I fly so much as a consultant. And I was trying to book a flight from Boulder, Colorado to London, UK, and I go there quite often for business. And I was having trouble booking online, so I called the support number, and they greet me with, "Ms. Burbank, are you calling about the flight you're trying to take from Boulder to London?" Well, yes, that's slightly creepy, but also really helpful. Well, yes, I am. So, would you like to take the same flight you took last month? If so, we can get that sorted for you. And it was all done. Why could they do that? Because they had the phone system. They were able to link my phone number to my name, to my flight patterns, to my history, to the fact that I'm a gazillion mile flyer, and so be nice to me. All of that was excellent customer service and excellent master data management. So I'm probably the only person on the planet, very few people on the planet, maybe the people on this call, who had that experience, was happy and thought, great master data management implementation. But that's the beauty of it. No one notices, it just works. And that's the kind of the ultimate state. You can also use it for reporting, and that is a value. And sometimes it's a phased approach. We often, in our implementations, say start with the reporting. You can learn a lot there. You can get a lot of value through analytics. Once that's sorted, then you might want to start pushing back to the system. Pushing back to systems has, as you can imagine, has tons of value. There's also a bit of risk, and that'll tie into some of the governance and process that we'll talk about as well. So MDM can be a source. Think of it almost feeding your conformed dimensions of a dimensional warehouse, if those wordings make sense to you. And that can be a really valuable use case, but it is not analytics. And on my vendor rant is, so many vendors say, we give you the 360 view of customer when you're really an MDM. You enable the 360 view. Once you have that MDM, you can do great things like graph analytics, social network analysis, data lakes, warehouse. It can feed all of these. And I actually had a question from Shannon's EDW conference today from someone who attended one of my workshops, and was, people are telling me that when we're doing AI and machine learning, we don't need master data. Is that true? Oh, no, it's not true. It's so many, I mean, it's the opposite, right? If you're trying to do social network analysis and the nodes in your graph don't matter, you have 6 different John Smiths, your AI is not going to be valuable, right? So volume and just throwing things at an AI model isn't going to be helpful. Actually, I would think one of the largest drivers of MDM now are these new hot, sexy technologies. You have to get the data right. So on the contrary, it's actually a great enabler for it. Okay, so the other thing is, a lot of this can be automated. You can do automated data quality rules. You can, embed those rules in these platforms or in whatever you code. You can do AI enabled. You can put fixed rules. And there's often a case to put human in the loop, especially when you're talking about people data. We have one client, they're doing a lot of medical patient matching and things. And even though everything is automated and generally the matching and merging and all of that is right, just in terms of compliance and the amount of risk, they always have a person validate that match. So in that case, it's kind of the best of both worlds. They have the automation, but they also have a check. Because humans are complicated and the amount of risk for them, their patient base, for whatever reason, has a lot of twins with really clever parents where, I kid you not, I want to strangle these parents. They have Taylor and Tyler that are 2 twin sisters born on the same day at the same house with the same parents. So maybe I'm the only person on the planet that worries about the data quality aspects of that. But how do you know that's not a typo versus there's twin sisters with 1 letter difference? A machine really can't do that very well. But most of these tools, once you do say, okay, these are twins, it'll keep that. But that's a great example of, you kind of need a human in the loop, because think of the negative, even though that's an extra step, Taylor is going in for surgery and Tyler isn't. Like, there's a pretty big risk there. So sometimes that is a good idea, which does come into governance. I am actually stealing one of Bill's researches when he was at Gartner, because I agree with it. He was talking about some of the top reasons where MDM can fail. It's also why it can really succeed when you do get it right is, again, the tech and the data can be hard, but how do we align that with business process or governance? And if you don't have those things right, it's hard to get success in the other areas. So a little bit about that. Again, we have whole webinars on governance, and these are fairly standard roles. You might have different roles in your organization. Generally, there's something like a business data steward who might be doing that person that is that human in the loop. Maybe that's the person that's responsible for the day-to-day management of, is this Taylor or Tyler? Generally, a business data owner is a little higher level, where maybe they set the rules that, surname should be 20 characters, or name is private and we shouldn't share it, or those high-level rules. The data steward's the hands-on. Your executive sponsor is going to say, yes, we're doing it, kind of rah, really setting that direction. And generally, there's a technical data steward to make sure that when you're doing that system integration, there aren't rules that are broken there. One of the reasons I bring this up, I've seen goods and bads and all across the board. One of the horror stories I saw is when they were implementing this human in the loop, because it was so important, they had their executive sponsors checking all of the customer names. I'm not sure who thought that was a good idea. They had execs spending 8 hours a day saying, is this Taylor or Tyler? Wrong role for that. Or maybe the business data owner might set that rule, but that's really a data steward role. So just think of in each of these steps, who's setting the rules, who's setting the direction, and who's doing the hands-on, and make sure you have that right level for each one. There's a lot of different models of governance and stewardship. There's process, there's no one size fits all. I would say there's a bias in the industry that this idea of having a data domain centric, saying who's going to be the steward for customer or the owner for customer. That seems really clean. Maybe there's a data architect looking at that. I would argue that's generally not the case. Who owns customer? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it customer support? Kind of all, right? Who owns patient? Is it the person checking me in to get my insurance or the doctor making the diagnosis? I would hope both at different phases, right? A process really looks at that business process, and then organization looks more at the, is it finance, marketing, and then systems would look at the system. I sometimes you have to do that because it's so system centric. I'm more of a fan of look at the process, look at the org, and the reality is generally it's a blend. So I won't spend tons of time on each one, but in terms of, if you look at the data domain centric version, it is always a helpful way to look at it. In fact, that's often where I start. I'm a big fan of conceptual data models in any data strategy, and I often use this as a starting point for even understanding what's your reference data and what's your master data. So we do the conceptual model. Here's one sort of example of everything in blue is your master data, your staff, your customers, your products. Reference data for them is sort of pink, departments and locations. You could argue right here, position, should that be reference data? Should that be master data? Depending on the org. Location, maybe that's master and not reference. But again, these conceptual data models are really good at defining the domains. I have one customer that she calls this her roadmap, and then they kind of have numbers on each one. We're starting with customer, Bill said, and I agree. Generally, it's an evolution. You never generally start and stop with one domain. Maybe we start with staff and then do customer and then do product, or whatever. And that's a nice way you can do a roadmap. Business process, I would say, is actually, I always start here with master data. How is that data used? And where I do see things go wrong with master data, it's often that someone forgot how people are using it. When we go back to that cheese example, we didn't follow it through its life cycle from when supply chain ordered it to when the person ordered it on the table. And so we often build out these business processes, and then the good old fashioned CRUD matrix, how is it used? Who's creating it? Who's updating it? Who's recreating it again in another system and not talking to each other? I have found like these aha moments generally is in something like this, where your swim lanes are probably going to be your data stewards, right? Who's looking at it from a shipping perspective or an accounting perspective, and then overlay. That's why that previous slide with the different models, it generally is some sort of blended approach, because reality isn't as simple as an architecture model, right? That I'm looking at customer data, if we do the domain centric, from the finance perspective, what they're ordering, or from the sales perspective, how I'm selling to them. Very different lens, but it's the same data. And that's really why you need to do these sort of process and CRUD matrix. Again, they don't have to take years to do. I've had aha moments doing this in a whiteboard in an afternoon. We did one really successful, we do architecture sprints. We did one in that big retail company I mentioned that had such value in just focusing on email. We did 4-week architecture sprints where we did process model, data model, CRUD matrix, art. You can do all that by picking those little slices and really focusing on the value. So don't skip it. Just if you don't have a lot of time, just do smaller pieces. Because if you skip it, you're going to have to do it again. The other way to look at it is from the organizational perspective. So either org chart, I'm a little more of a fan of capabilities because orgs change, but you generally have a capability of finance or marketing, or maybe it's a little bit of a nuance there. But again, why I look at that, generally there's some data governance committee that needs to look at this holistically with your big master. The reason it's master data is because so many people are using it. So you have to really get those different perspectives that, you know, the same attribute can be used differently from sales and marketing. Or another rant, I have a credit card company that I'm already a customer of, and they still for the past 10 years have been sending me an ad in the old-fashioned mail to get their credit card. Why? Because sales and marketing and supply and finance aren't talking. They don't have clearly they don't have a data governance committee asking who is a customer. And so you really need, because it's cross-functional, you need that cross-functional group view. So as promised, I want to go back to the why a slice of cheese cost $1 million US. So this is a master data management example where, again, we came in, our sponsor was actually marketing of all things. And we walked in the room and they said, we don't have a good view of even our menu data. You know, our printer has a better idea of our menu data and our menus change. So they didn't know it was called master data management. We didn't know that was the problem until we started. We talked from everyone from the kitchens to the supply chain. We went into the restaurants and ordered the thing with a piece of cheese. And really, it was more of a business process issue. All of those areas along the supply chain, we did a good old-fashioned CRUD matrix and realized that the price of the component or the ingredient wasn't being tracked along the life cycle. So their governance committee actually was their product launch committee, because at product launch, anybody from sales to marketing to the person on the colors of the curtains of the store can stop a launch by saying there's something wrong. And now the data team has a voice in this and saying we can't launch because the data isn't in the right format or the right stage. And that was huge. What was also huge about it, that was data governance, but it's so integrated into their business as usual process. Again, that sort of master data by stealth, maybe. Again, the CEO that we sold this to, she had never heard of master data before. We showed her a big hamburger with a slice of cheese and all of the risk around it and the price around it. And then she said, great, what do we do? We got a lot of sponsorship there. So this is, I think, a great example of, we did all of the above, from governance to domain-centric to process-centric, et cetera, and did all of those pieces. And they fixed the $1 million product. So to wrap up, because I know there's a lot of questions, master data is hot. Why is master data hot? Because it drives your organization. How do we get that right? Yes, there's a data architecture and tool component, but also think of the process and governance, because you will see the benefit. That may seem hard, but I bet on very few things, but you will either show efficiency and or revenue increase. As Shannon opens it up for questions, just to remind you that next month we're talking about architecture and solution architecture. If you're interested in that, we do this for a living if you need help, blatant plug, and I will open up now for questions. So over to you, Shannon.
I love it, Donna. Thank you so much. And if you have questions for Donna or Rick or Bill, please submit them in the Q&A section of your screen. And something that we've kind of set up in the Zoom platform here is you can, if you see a question that you were going to ask is already typed out for you, you can just click on that little thumbs up and say, hey, I was going to ask that question too. And it'll help the questions there, and it'll move them up and down. And again, if you have any feedback on anything, let me know. Diving in here for everybody, you know, Rick just came in when you were talking. What is VPC? Oh, you're muted, Rick.
Sorry, I was actually just typing a response to that. So it's virtual private cloud. But the idea with keeping the data in the client's VPC is that they maintain control of their data. So the whole point is that the data never leaves their control.
I love it. And Bill, this question also came in for you when you were talking, what cloud platform do you accept for Prophecy?
Pretty much anything that can run Kubernetes. We do have clients on Google Cloud and AWS, but one thing I really have time to bring up is we are, and this makes us unique in the MDM world as well, we're completely written in the Microsoft stack. So we have a very close relationship with Microsoft. So we spend a lot of time optimizing for Azure, and a lot of our clients now are really tending to go that way. But we do run on anything that'll run on that will run Kubernetes.
Great. And so based on your master data examples, Donna, where do you differentiate master data and CDEs, critical data elements?
I would say, in my mind, and everyone has a different definition. In some organizations, I generally think a critical data element is more at that element level, more of the attribute level. Maybe that's your first name, your social security number, et cetera. So I tend to think of it that way. Some of my clients think of, again, if you have that enterprise conceptual model, we're kind of considering those domains as critical data, maybe CDAs, critical data areas. And then within that, there's either those critical data elements within, if your domain is customer, I would say something like social insurance number, social security number is going to be more of your element, or even some key, maybe I'm wider than some people, but even some of your key KPIs for analytics might be more at that element level. But that's how I see. I see of elements more at that attribute or field level, and then your master data is more your entity or your concept level. I don't know if Bill or the other speakers have them.
I've got a short one and probably more classic, which is, master data is the stuff that's widely shared and slowly changing, state driven versus event driven. Critical data elements, if going way back, are the things that are necessary to do individually identify a record. So matching elements.
Great.
That's how we used to use CDE. Was anything you kind of just, Donna, you just worked your way up to it and listing those elements, but the top down definition we used to use was anything that you need for matching in a domain.
Great. Rick, anything you want to add to that?
No, I can see that. So I did some work, some database work where we would have to uniquely identify individuals. And, it depends on the parameters you choose. But yes, I agree with the definitions that have been issued so far. Yeah.
Thank you. Also, how do you reconcile MDM with privacy? For example, in New Zealand, we are not supposed to combine data from the crash analysis system with the driver's license and motor vehicle registry.
Yeah, I would argue you really can't do great data privacy without master data. And so one of the key, when you have this, say this governance council or whatever, one of the key decisions of these CDEs actually is what's private. So, and I've had some customers just be stymied and stopped by not being able to use customer data because they're so at fear of things like GDPR, which is correct. So being able to have that flexibility by we now have a really good sense of our customer data, and then based on view, we're actually working with a medical, and depending on the role, some master data can be shown but to the therapist, but in general, those can't. So, but they would never have, so they could use their data in a lot more ways for analytics than they could because they're able to really focus on the fields that can be shared, like anonymized gender and race and things like that. But you can't get there without master data. So one of the key parts of the, maybe I should put that in the next presentation I do on this, it was one of the key parts of that analysis is actually security and privacy. So that's a great question. If anyone else has thoughts on that.
I would just say, we get that all the time, and we've actually looked at some partnerships that we eventually didn't pursue around that. Often privacy data is master data and is included in MDM implementations. But the broad answer is, I say this at least 5 or 6 times a day. Prophecy, like other solutions in the MDM world, is a model agnostic platform. So if you can data model your way out of something, you can do it in MDM. If you're dealing with a multi-domain platform. So a lot of the answers to those questions that we get are, how would you do, I'll turn the question around and say, if you were building a business app that had to do that, what would you do from a data model perspective? And when they answer, we just say, okay, we can do the same thing, just with the master data.
All right. Well, that brings us right to the top of the hour. I'm going to see if I can just slip in one more quick question here because I can't help myself. So this question, Donna, specifically for you, as a data architect, I'm admirer of most of the stuff that you present. It's good data wisdom. Are you ever accused of being old-fashioned by the new technology coming out? I know.
I consider it foundational. But yeah, I would say I was accused of that how many times a day just this morning. I think I brought it up when they said you don't need things like good quality data for artificial intelligence, and all I have to do is sort of walk people through the thought process behind that. And then, yeah, I think sometimes, no offense to them, I have not heard it from the vendors in this call, but vendors do a disservice of, hey, that's old fashioned. You don't need to have good data anymore. You just buy our tool and everything is sort of magic. My favorite one is, I think I even shared on a previous call, I'm happy that this is now, but it was actually the opposite. It was a youngster right out of university, and I was talking about data governance. He's like, don't throw those buzzwords at me like data governance. I know that's the new hot, sexy thing. It's like, wow, I've been around long enough that governance is now the new hot, sexy thing. Because I think the more people are using data, they need these, I would call foundational things. So no, I'm not old fashioned.
I love it. There's just some things I just don't go out of style.
Exactly, like my clothes. That's why I'm not on camera. All right, I will end there.
Well, thanks for having fun with me and answering that question. And thank you both. Thanks to Couchbase and thanks to Prophecy for sponsoring today's webinar and helping me make these webinars happen. And thanks to everybody for being so engaged in everything that we do and in the chat and Q&A there. Again, just a reminder, I will send a follow-up email by end of day Monday to all registrants with links to the slides and links to the recording of this session, as well as the additional information requested throughout. Hope you all have a great day. If you feel free to give me any feedback you want on the webinar, you'll see my email in the follow-up as well. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy and stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.